back to this whole social media thing, even the traditional media, um, during the course of you being CJI, there have been a spate of articles about you, and even after completion of your term, there's this conversation. Do you just feel that this is a new phenomenon with Justice Bobde and then with you, a lot of media attention on your tenure? How do you deal with it,
See,
firstly?
media attention on the tenure of a judge and of a chief justice is to a certain extent understandable, especially if you decide important cases. And I think that's one thing which I try to do. I tried to decide as many important cases which were languishing for years, irrespective of whether they were in that sense politically important or socially important. Just the fact that these were important constitutional cases which were pending for years in our Supreme Court, cases dealing with the federal structure, for instance. The question of
So you're okay with that, with this, that your judgments got passed to such a great extent and you were criticized personally?
Well, being okay with that is really, it begs the question, but I should have anticipated it, that these are judgments which are going to change the future of our society. Now, see the case like, who should tax mineral rights? Should the states tax them? Should the center tax them? Who should have control over industrial alcohol? States or center? What is the nature of cooperative federalism under the GST legislation? Or for that matter, private property. Merely because an individual is a part of the community, does every property of the individual become the material resource of the community? We overruled an earlier judgment of our court, which had said, yes, an individual is a part of the community. Therefore, everything that an individual owns is a material resource of the community which can be acquired. So these are really cases which are going to change the future course of our society. So having laid down, the law in these decisions, it's but natural that people are going to discuss these decisions. I have no problem about that. My concern, however, is this: when people go beyond the judgment and start, attacking the judge. And what's happened in social media really is that, particularly in a polarized polity, you have segments of, this opinion which is sort of be generated in social media. If you decide in my favor, or if you decide in favor of the opinion which I think is the correct line to take, then you are independent. If you take a decision on the other end of the spectrum, you're not independent. Now, that's not how judging goes. Judges judges are not born to be either liberal or conservative. These are phrases which are used by the political commentators.
But that's what happened with you. When you came, everybody was like, oh, here's a liberal judge. And then came the Ayodhya judgment. And that's where people said that, what has he done? And you didn't even sign that. What happened? Why didn't the judges sign that judgment? What happened?
You
What was
want me
that?
to answer the
Both.
latter, the latter?
Both.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes,
whichever way
certainly.
you want to.
Okay, I'll answer the latter part, lest I forget to cover that in my response. Ayodhya was an issue which had really, in that sense, covered a whole history of several hundred years. It was an issue which had threatened to tear apart the social fabric of the nation. And when we decided the case and we ultimately sat in conference, Chief Justice Gogoi was our Chief Justice at that time, a decision was taken consciously by all the judges together that there shall be no attribution of authorship to the judgment. And the reason for that was we all felt that it's important to send this message across that every one of us, Justice Gogoi, Justice Bobde, me, Justice Ashok Bhushan, and Justice Abdul Nazir, we stand together on this issue and we speak with one voice. And that was the intent behind not attributing authorship to any one person in the judgment. Of course, though there have been speculation outside on who actually wrote the judgment. That's besides the point. So that's the...
How much of it was yours? Or can you speak about it?
Well,
No.
as I said, we haven't attributed authorship of the judgment. So as an institutional,
10 sentences, 15
as an institutional person, I should stand behind
Okay.
that, because
I get
we decided not to attribute authorship to the judgment. Speculations are for others outside. For me, I'm part of, as a disciplined soldier, that, well, it was a judgment of the
But
court.
did it weigh down on all of you? And on when you were sitting down, did you realize that this goes back centuries, and what we do today is going to impact on billions of Indians? Today, tomorrow.
Well, if I were to answer that question in the negative, it wouldn't be a correct answer. Obviously, when you decide cases, you understand the significance of the issue which you are considering in this context of the wider polity. But having said that, when you actually try and analyze a case, now that was a first appeal. It was a first appeal from a suit or suits which were filed before the Allahabad High Court. Now, when you deal with a first appeal as courts, there is a very significant body of law on how a first appeal has to be dealt with. And when we dealt with the case, and I'm not speaking about the merits of the case because that's now, our judgment is part of,
Sure.
it's public property for others to talk about the judgment. I'm just talking to you about, the generality of the processes, which is that when you deal with a first appeal, how you deal with a first appeal is now written in stone for all of us because we've dealt with numerous cases, either first appeals and then second appeals or revisions. So this is part of judicial process. So while you are, of course, it would be hypocritical to say that a judge does not bear in mind the fact that you are dealing with a seminal constitutional case. At the same time, the processes of reasoning which you apply, the yardsticks which you apply for decisions of those cases are governed by the standard and well laid down parameters for the exercise of the first appellate jurisdiction, as it was in that case. Going back to the first part of your question on, the second part was on authorship. And the first part, you spoke about, people trolling judges. I have no difficulty about people critiquing judgments of courts because obviously today we are deciding cases of seminal importance as in the high courts, in the Supreme Court. Even when district courts either decide to grant or not grant relief in a particular case, it might have wider ramifications. So people are entitled to comment, critique. I have no
Yeah.
difficulty about that. My concern is when individual judges are trolled for the reason that the decision which they took in that particular case does not accord with the view of a segment of the population. And that is why, you said that, well, I was, I was regarded initially as a liberal.
Yeah.
I think, these labels of being either liberal or conservative, I'll give you a simple example. If you grant bail, you are regarded as a liberal. Now, if you don't grant bail, should that very judge be regarded as conservative? What if it's a case involving, say, a brutal rape and murder of a minor girl? Judge doesn't grant bail. Does that judge then become a conservative? No, because, the decision to grant bail or not grant bail, of course, the liberty of the accused is of very significant importance. But you also look at the wider societal impact of the crime. For instance, as in the example that I gave you, if a young minor has been raped and murdered, then obviously the seriousness of the crime and its impact on society, on social security, is something which has to weigh in the mind of the court under decided cases.
So it happened with you when you were giving bail to, like you said, A to Z, you have given bail. So certain bails got appreciated, certain bails you got trolled for giving it. But there was the other thing which you got trolled when you said, I'm going to bring this up. I know you've explained it, but I'm going to ask you because some of our viewers may not know. When you said, I pray to a deity for a solution to the Ayodhya dispute. Now, uh, this was termed shocking, and that you asked for divine intervention. There were many views about it, whether it was what led you to make that decision that day. Was it because you prayed? So, if you could explain
Well,
this to me.
like everything else on social media, what I said has been misconstrued. Because what you say is then sort of compressed into, a small short of 20 seconds. And what you said on a particular occasion is then put forth in 20 seconds as your view, which is not so. Now, I must tell you that when I spoke on that occasion, just before I laid down office, I went to my own village, which is about an hour and a half from Pune. It's a village called Kanersar, which is predominantly an agricultural community. And I thought I must go to my village. We have a old house built in the 18th century, which was there. And I thought I must go there and finally meet everyone before I lay down office. During the course of my conversation, a lot of youngsters asked me, we see you on YouTube. Many of them have now left the village, like I left, and so many other people have left. How is it that you maintain an element of calm in the midst of conflict? And that was what I was specifically asked to speak on. And I said, well, everybody has their own formula. Everyone has their own approach to life. For me, the time that I spend in prayer and meditation every morning is what ultimately sustains me as a person. Because, of course, I didn't say that you didn't have to apply the law, the constitution, to deciding individual cases. Obviously not. Even